like this one at the Wall Street Journal, quote, Trump to invoke seldom used wartime law from 1798. Or this one from CBS News. Professor says Trump's plan to invoke Alien Enemies Act of 1798 sidesteps immigration laws. And then, inevitably, because of the history of that law, we started to see last night headlines like this from the ABC affiliate in San Diego, in this case. Japanese Americans react to Trump's plan to invoke Alien Enemies Act. And then this morning, we got the news that Senator Alan Simpson of Wyoming died today in Cody, Wyoming, where he was from. He was 93 years old. President Donald Trump gave a speech today at the U.S. Justice Department, which itself is a rare thing for a president to do. In that speech, he was expected. White House sources had made clear to lots of reporters that President Trump was expected to announce at that speech that he is going to invoke the Japanese internment law. He is going to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which, again, has only ever been used 3 times before in our country and always in wartime. And the last time we used it, men like Mineta and Alan Simpson and fricking Ronald Reagan ended up moving the nation to apologize for it, to call it a stain on our national honor, and not only to formally apologize, but to pay reparations for what we have done. Trump wants to do it again, according to multiple White House sources in speaking with multiple reporters at multiple news agencies. That said, Trump didn't announce it at the Justice Department at his speech today. And he might have meant to. Who knows? His speech went completely off the rails. He started giving what sounded like orders to Justice Department officials in the room that they should go after a government watchdog group, Crew, that has brought lawsuits against his administration. The Justice Department should act against them somehow. And for something, he started to say that the Justice Department should go after CNN and should go after MSNBC and should go after a whole big list of people he sees as his enemies. So his speech, who knows how much of that was written and how much of it was just him being moved in the moment. He got so wound up about telling the Justice Department individually to go after his enemies today that maybe he forgot the part about let's rerun Japanese internment. But presumably that's coming. I'm assuming that it'll come in some midnight or 4 a.m. announcement or some misspelled all capital letters Truth Social post or something. We'll see. Today, there was a big protest in Washington by and for U.S. veterans as Trump moves to fire 83,000 people who work at the VA serving our veterans. It was actually a really big turnout today in Washington for that veterans protest. Thousands of people turned out on the National Mall for that. They chose today for this protest, March 14th, 314, as a reference to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which is where it says that you're disqualified from holding office in this country if you have engaged in insurrection against this country. And there were more protests by veterans and by people supporting veterans, not just in D.C. today, but in St. Louis, Missouri, at the VA Medical Center there, and in Madison, Wisconsin, at the state capitol there, and in Concord, New Hampshire, at the state capitol there, and in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and in Bismarck, North Dakota, and at the Arkansas state capitol, and at the Airport Rotary in Hyannis, Massachusetts today, and at the Massachusetts state capitol in Boston, and in Tallahassee, Florida, and at the Ohio State House in Columbus, Ohio. Veterans protest today all over this country. At a very difficult town hall for Republican Congressman Chuck Edwards in North Carolina last night, one man identifying himself as a veteran was thrown out of the room at the congressman's insistence and cheered loudly by everybody else in the room after he shouted at the Republican congressman, "You don't get to take away our rights." Well, Republican Congressman Andy Harris showed up in Cambridge, Maryland last night to give a speech. He was greeted with this big 3D milk carton, as if he's a missing kid on the milk carton. Also greeted with a lot of outraged constituents from his own district in Maryland, people demanding that he meet with them, that he do a town hall, something, to answer for what Trump and Republicans are just doing to dismantle the federal government. This was the protest in Bay City, Michigan today, as local people turned out to greet Vice President J.D. Vance when he showed up in town to do a speech at a local plastics factory. The fact that he was at a plastics factory explains signs like this one: "Wrap Vance in plastic, shipped to Russia." This was a protest outside the Tesla dealership in West Bloomfield, Michigan yesterday. This was Navy Captain and U.S. Senator Mark Kelly today in Washington, explaining that today he is selling his Tesla.
Hey folks, it's Mark Kelly here in Washington, driving to work for the last time in my Tesla. When I bought this thing, I didn't think it was going to become a political issue. Every time I get in this car in the last 60 days or so, it reminds me of just how much damage Elon Musk and Donald Trump is doing to our country. Talking about slashing Social Security, cutting health care benefits for poor people, for seniors. It's one bad thing after the next. He's firing veterans. I'm a veteran, so I have a really hard time driving around in this thing. So I think it's time for an upgrade today. So this is going to be my last trip in this car. There were some things I really liked about it. There are things I didn't like about it, but that doesn't matter. What matters is, doing the right thing. I think it's time to get rid of it. Elon Musk kind of turned out to be a and I don't want to be driving the car built and designed by
Pushback looks different everywhere. It involves all kinds of people in all kinds of places, and it takes all kinds of forms. Can't win if you don't play. We've got big Justice Department news tonight. We've got truly unsettling news tonight about a volcano, and the volcano isn't the worst of it. We've got news about a big protest, a big national protest being called for Saturday, April 5th in Washington, D.C. We'll have details on that ahead of you tonight from one of the organizers. We got a lot to get to tonight. Stay with us. Donald Trump's first acts upon being sworn in as president for a second term was to appoint a new U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. His name is Ed Martin. It quickly became clear what made Ed Martin so appealing to Trump for this term. Ed Martin was at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. He said it was great, said it was like Mardi Gras. He later served as a defense lawyer for several Trump supporters who were charged with attacking police officers during the attack on the Capitol that day. Once Trump named him U.S. attorney in Washington, the top federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C., Mr. Martin immediately set about demoting and firing federal prosecutors who had worked on January 6th cases. He also, honestly, tried to indict Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, an effort so outlandish he apparently couldn't even get Trump Justice Department officials to sign off on it. Ed Martin also tried to get one top prosecutor in his office to order a bank to freeze billions of dollars that had been dispersed by the Biden administration in a federal grant. That prosecutor resigned rather than follow that order from Ed Martin. She resigned because she said there was no crime, there was no legal justification for opening a criminal investigation and thereby freezing those funds. She said he was essentially telling her to fake a criminal investigation, and she wouldn't do it. Ed Martin, after she resigned, then personally signed and submitted a seizure warrant for the funds in that bank account because he couldn't find anybody else willing to sign it. The judge he submitted that warrant to rejected it because, again, no evidence of any crime. This week, Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, asked the Justice Department's Inspector General to open an inquiry into the behavior of Mr. Martin as U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C. Raskin's letter outlined all the things Martin has done that he says could potentially deserve investigation by the Inspector General. The list runs to 9 pages, single-spaced, in small type. Ed Martin hasn't even been running that office for 2 months. Democrats in the Senate have also asked for an investigation of Ed Martin from the D.C. bar. And in a development that's surely totally unrelated, I should mention that Ed Martin and Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi are reportedly now moving to try to take control of the D.C. bar themselves. They're doing it very stealthily by having Ed Martin's deputy and Pam Bondi's brother run for leadership roles to take over the D.C. bar. Good luck with that. I'm sure nobody will notice. Is it the Bondi as in Bondi? Yeah, same last name. You might think that developments like this might create a real sense of turmoil, hunkering down maybe, or at least a lot of renewed hard work at the Justice Department. Well, let's look at what Attorney General Pam Bondi has been up to in the midst of this mess. You might recall that last week, Trump signed an executive order to punish a particular law firm because that law firm has done work for Democrats. Among other things, Trump's executive order would block anyone from that law firm from entering federal courthouses, which might make it difficult to be a lawyer in Washington, D.C. I'm just saying. The law firm naturally sued, and because the case was so important to Trump, and potentially because it was difficult to find any career prosecutors who really wanted to defend it, Attorney General Pam Bondi sent her own chief of staff, the Attorney General's chief of staff, to argue the case himself personally in federal court. Bring it in like the biggest guns they got. And her chief of staff just got blown out of court by the judge. The Trump administration lost that with an exclamation point. The judge said Trump's order sent a chill down her spine. She said the whole legal profession was, quote, watching in horror what Trump was trying to do and what the Attorney General's chief of staff was trying and very much failing to defend in court. Pam Bondi and Trump's Justice Department are also apparently trying to launch an investigation into the otherwise totally normal process of funding shelters for migrants in New York City. I say they are trying to launch an investigation there because they seem to be having trouble with some of the fundamentals, like spelling. At least one of the subpoenas they sent out has folks in New York scratching their heads because it went to something called the Hotel Chandler. Hotel Chandler does not host immigrants at all. It's not clear what's going on there with the Hotel Chandler, but a CBS News report does note that, quote, a source familiar with the shelter system pointed out that another hotel with a similar name, the Candler, is in fact a hotel where they house migrants. Asked about the situation with the Chandler and the Candler, a spokesman for the Department of Justice said, quote, we will decline to comment on an ongoing investigation. Also, Pam, do you? But don't worry about it. When it comes to the really important stuff, Pam Bondi is on it. This went out from her office this week. All caps. Memorandum for all department employees from the Attorney General. Subject, ending procurement of paper straws. Quote, in accordance with President Trump's direction. The Department of Justice, she's talking about the U.S. Department of Justice, shall take appropriate action to eliminate the procurement of paper straws and ensure that paper straws are no longer provided within department buildings. Department components shall take appropriate action to identify and eliminate any portion of policy or guidance documents designed to disfavor plastic straws. Oh, you guys, the Justice Department's long nightmare is over. Today, Pam Bondi took time out of her busy schedule of vanquishing plastic straw discrimination to welcome the president to the Justice Department, making sure to point out to him the most important decor, the picture of him, after which Trump gave a long, discursive, rambling, angry speech to Justice Department employees that included basic enemies he'd like them to look into. Ed Martin at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, he seems to already have his own enemies list. I mentioned that Ed Martin tried to indict Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is one of only several people, including several elected officials, all Democrats, who Martin appears to be targeting for investigation. He's also sent a letter to Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia because Robert Garcia criticized Elon Musk. So that got him a threatening letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Democratic Congressman Eugene Vindman this week also revealed that he has received a threatening letter from Ed Martin, this one asking about his personal finances. Eugene Vindman and his twin brother Alexander Vindman have long been targets of Donald Trump's rage and invective for their roles in bringing to light the events that led to Trump's first impeachment. This is the letter that D.C. U.S. Attorney Ed Martin sent to Congressman Vindman. It starts, quote, Dear Eugene, Do you always write your business? Just dear, quote, I have received requests for clarification of your personal financial disclosures over the past year. I look forward to your cooperation with my letter of inquiry after requests. Thank you in advance for your assistance with this. Please respond by day, month, date 2025. That is literally what the letter says. Day, month, date 2025. Only the best people. Washington Post now reports that Ed Martin has sent about 20 of these kinds of threatening letters to public officials and public figures of various kinds. We only know about this one to Congressman Vindman because he decided to go public with it, saying Trump is trying to, quote, intimidate and silence public servants like me, and it's not going to work. Congressman Vindman joins us next. Stay with us.
We've been abused for a long time as a country. We have been abused really for a long time, and we will be abused no longer. But look, the EU was set up in order to take advantage of the United States. The United States of America is going to take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries.
It's nonsense, but the way to understand Trumpism, really, the core of it, is to view every interaction as zero-sum. You are either screwing someone or you are the one getting screwed. It's the politics that Donald Trump plays on, which is a sense of scarcity. There's only so much to go around, and you got to get the most of it. And the way to counteract that, to diffuse this very dangerous reactionary impulse that we're seeing around this sense of scarcity, is to create its opposite, abundance. That's the argument of Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson, and the one they make in the case for a liberal answer to the Trump-Musk wrecking ball in their new book, Abundance, writing, we seek a politics of abundance that delivers real marvels in the real world. We want more homes and more energy, more cures and more construction. This is a story that must be built out of bricks and steel and solar panels and transmission lines, not just words. But it is a story, and we believe it is truer to the American character and experience than the narrow narrative of scarcity that has taken hold. Ezra Klein is a New York Times columnist, host of the Ezra Klein Show podcast. He's co-author of the new book, Abundance, with Derek Thompson. It's out on Tuesday. You can pre-order it now wherever you get your books. Ezra, great to have you here.
So good to be here.
I read the first chapter on the way in and loved it. I read your essay in the New York Times. Let's start on this sort of idea of zero-sum versus non-zero-sum, and also where that fits in with the ideological spectrum. Because one of the things that's interesting about it is it's a little orthogonal to the ideological spectrum.
Yeah, you have abundance and scarcity in both parties. Yeah. There is a world where the right is the party of its own form of abundance. Like take housing. Texas has much easier housing regulations than a lot of states, and so you have this interesting world where Houston, Austin, Dallas, they build much more than Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City. Did Donald Trump and J.D. Vance run on that? No. They did run on there being a housing crisis, but their answer to it was fewer immigrants. We're going to close the borders.
If we deport enough immigrants,
yes,
then you can get enough people.
Yeah, the only answer to not building enough apartments is deporting human beings. Right. But everything for them is like this, right? We don't make enough things in this country. So what are we going to do? We're going to lay down tariffs on the entire world and cut the amount of trade. They are destroying the capacity of the federal government, right? DOGE is a wrecking ball aimed at state capacity. Everything Donald Trump looks at, he sees a reason to give us less of something else. And the reason is that the populist right, their politics is powered by scarcity. When you feel you don't have enough, you look with suspicion on anybody you think might take it from you. And their whole politics is getting you to look with suspicion on whoever they are going to tell you might take it from you.
The place where I think you guys are most on the mark on this nexus between this policy problem, which is it's hard to build stuff, to oversimplify, and the politics is if you look at the election returns in this last election in California and New Jersey and New York, there was no campaign there, basically no ads. These are places that are pretty democratic, but they're places where it's hard to build stuff and housing is wicked expensive. And people did turn to Trump. And that feels like that's a big part of that story.
If you want to marginalize a dangerous political movement, the first thing to do is prove the success of your own. And so I think there's going to be a pressure to focus only on the sins right now of the MAGA right. And it makes sense. I've been watching your show tonight, man. There are a lot of sins. Things are going pretty badly.
It's pretty bad.
And at the same time, the fact that New York, Illinois, California are losing people by the hundreds of thousands every year. And they say, I mean, we all know why it is, right? Cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. That is also why Democrats lost the election. Cost of living, cost of living. And the reason cost of living is bad in blue states is Democrats do not focus on supply. They subsidize things, right? You'll get rental vouchers for housing or Pell Grants for education, but they don't make enough of the things they're subsidizing. And so you get rationing, you get price increases. It is really important, if you want to protect government from the wrecking ball if people want to break it and control it and corrupt it, to make government effective so people feel it in their lives and they believe you, they will actually get something by voting for you.
One of the places where I'm most obsessed with this, and you guys write about this in the book, is on energy. And the reason for this is that we do have this sort of once in a lifetime, once in a human history challenge, right? Which is to move off of fossil fuels. But if we do get it right, this world opens up of basically zero marginal cost energy. Like if we can actually figure it out, it transforms everything.
Yeah, the gift of the sun.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary what would be possible. I really want to see. There's a divided Democratic soul on this, right? There's always been the part of liberals of the Democratic Party who have a kind of small is beautiful, who are suspicious of technology, who have a sacrifice, reduce, reuse, recycle approach to this. And
There's too many people, we're building too much, capitalism is destroying the planet.
And a lot of our environmental legislation dates back to that world. And there was a reason for that world, right? The New Deal liberalism, it built recklessly, it built aggressively. We choked LA. I grew up outside LA with smog. But now we have, as you say, this moment where the first thing we need to do is build relentlessly. Our only path, our only possible narrow path to prevent the worst of climate change is to build solar, wind, battery power at a scale and a pace like nobody's ever done in human history. But if we do that, if we can put technology at the center here, energy abundance is the goal. Getting away from climate change is not the goal.
Right.
Energy abundance is the goal, right? Like energy is really the core of wealth. And if we could give just every person, the energy that the people of Iceland have, the things that become possible, because they live on top of all this geothermal energy, the things that become possible are remarkable.
And particularly for the world's poorest people who are both poor in dollar terms and poor in energy terms, and because they're poor in energy terms, are also dependent on the most polluting fossil fuels and are dealing with cooking stoves and all this stuff. Like a world of genuinely free and abundant energy is also just a much more humane world for all the people who live in it.
And it gets to why it is so insane that Trump and Vance and Musk, who used to be big on climate change,
This is truly one of the most insane turnabouts.
The craziest heel turns. Musk, who pulled out of the advisory board in the first Trump administration because Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords. Yes. They are trying to destroy the solar and wind industries because they actually don't want energy abundance. They want fossil fuels. They view energy as a culture war, not as a pursuit of the actual goal of energy abundance. Solar is an amazing industry right now. Wind, battery, these are amazing industries. And they're trying to destroy them, except when Trump goes to do an infomercial for, as he calls it, Tesla. Like the whole thing is they do not need to treat everything as if it's just about owning the libs. Yeah. They don't need to. They could actually try to give us more, but they don't want it. They want you to hate each other.
One of the things I really liked about the first chapter of the book, and sort of, I don't know if we can show the cover again, because I love the cover too, because the cover does a very good job of capturing this, is, you and I, when I was on your podcast, talked about this idea of what's the opposite of doom. I think we've talked a little bit about the fact that dystopia is very popular and current. I mean, people talk about it, but utopia, or whatever the opposite of that is, these visions of the future, like the jetpacks and the flying cars, we just don't have that. We don't have Jetsons. And that part of any political project that can work, and Trump was pretty good at this, building stuff, right? Musk, the reason people like him, right? He makes rocket ships, is a vision of that.
Musk changed the meaning of Trump much more than I think Democrats want to admit. In his first term, Donald Trump represented the past. Yeah. The addition of Musk, of Mark Andreessen, to some degree of RFK Jr., it created a dynamism. These people, among other things, are futurist influencers. Yeah. Now, because they're going to wreck the present, I don't think it's going to work out. But liberals, Democrats, They need to recapture the future. They need a vision not of today, not just of parceling out the present, but of where we are trying to go and working backwards from it. People vote for the future. They do not vote just for the present or for the past. And that, I think, has become a genuine vulnerability for Democrats.
I totally agree. Ezra Klein, his new book, Abundance, will be wherever you like to get your books on Tuesday. And a fun fact, you can call up your local library often or go in and ask them to order a new book, which is also a great way to get new books. I've been getting great feedback from people who've done that. Ezra, congrats on the book.
Thank you so much, man.
That is all in for this week. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
You and me and Ezra all sitting here, I feel like it's a class reunion. I know. I think things outside the three of us have taken a real turn. But exactly. We're all exactly the same people, all in very different circumstances.
Yes, exactly.
But we all go way back. Thank you, Chris, and congratulations on the book, Ezra. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, and thanks to at home for joining us this hour. Happy Friday night. Really, really happy to have you here. I've got a story we're going to lead with tonight that I don't think you've heard anywhere else. We are going to start tonight in Haddon Township, New Jersey, Haddon, Haddon Township. It's pretty close to Camden. It's also pretty close to Philly, but it's a very, very New Jersey place, and I mean that in the best possible way. We have been watching one particular community story unfold in Haddon Township, New Jersey over the course of the last couple of weeks. And I want you to see this story and what's happened here over the last couple of weeks, because I think it tells you something about where we are at right now as a people and as a country.
In Haddon Township Saturday, an outpouring of support. Both sides of Haddon Ave lined with people, all here to stand behind the Mineta family, owners of this local restaurant, Jersey Kebab, after parents Jalal and Amina were arrested by ICE Tuesday morning.
It's been truly a roller coaster of feelings for the last few days.
Their son, Muhammad, says his mom remains in ICE custody. His dad was released with an ankle bracelet. While they're closed until further notice, he was here cooking free food for the community that has showed his family love, filling their store windows with notes and raising hundreds of thousands of dollars.
This shows me, this is not okay.
It just saddens us.
ICE released a statement Friday. While they did not share many specific details about the case, a spokesperson did write in part, as with any non-citizen in the U.S. without lawful status, ICE officers make enforcement decisions on a case-by-case basis to focus on the greatest threats to homeland security. Muhammad says his parents have no criminal histories, and he says they are not threats, known here to give back.
I think it's obvious. It's clear that they're a pillar of the community. They're a model.
With Ramadan now underway, Muhammad says his family's sole focus is on securing his mom's release from ICE custody.
The situation, the court case will go on, but all we were worried about is just having our mom by our side.
In the meantime, the community says they will continue to show support, many writing letters on the family's behalf.
We're going to stick with them no matter how long this takes.
In Haddon Township, Siobhan McGurl, NBC 10 News.
We're going to stick with them no matter how long this takes. So that was starting a couple weeks ago, these protests in Haddon Township, New Jersey, over the mom from the beloved local Jersey Kebab shop being arrested by the Trump administration. It turns out that was just the start.
One by one, community members have their handwritten letters notarized and tucked in an envelope to send to the court.
The goal is for the judges, the politicians, and anyone locally with influence and power to know that the community stands by this resident.
Isis Williams is the president of a group working to bring inclusivity and equity to their community. Members set up a letter writing campaign Sunday on behalf of MNA Mineta.
We are a loving environment in this town.
Dozens of people packed into a yoga studio just down the street from the kebab business.
Emil's a great person, runs a great business here on Haddon Ave that we eat at frequently, has done a lot, especially through COVID, caring for members of the community.
All hoping their words of experience with the Minets would make a difference.
Their business is a beloved establishment that brings both delicious food and beautiful culture that enriches the community.
Again, this is Haddon Township, New Jersey. And I'm telling you, that wasn't the end of it either. Watch this.
Here in Camden County, we take it as a personal attack on all of us.
In South Jersey, a gathering of support for a family facing uncertainty.
The really only thing we wish we could have is our mother by our side.
Randy Teague is the mayor in Haddon Township, where Jersey Kebab is located.
We consider this situation maybe somewhat different than some of the other ones that we hear on TV, where there's criminals and rapists and so forth coming into our country. They came in here legally, and they're trying to stay here legally.
This family is a family that embodies the very best of Camden County. And now they're torn apart by this broken immigration system. It is time to stand up for good people. It is time to stand up for humanity. These folks do not deserve this. These folks do not deserve this.
Pushback. It looks different everywhere. It involves all kinds of people in all kinds of places, and it takes all kinds of forms. Don't let anybody tell you that pushback doesn't matter, that it doesn't work.
Amina Eminent is back home for the very first time in 2 weeks. The love and all of those messages continue to pour out here at her restaurant. She tells us today all she wants to do really is be with her family and come back to Jersey Kebab.
I'm so happy now.
All smiles for Amina Eminent. Just moments before the grandmother met with the media, she emerged from the ICE detention center in Elizabeth, New Jersey to her waiting family. Hugs and flowers for the woman who's grabbed the hearts of many in her Haddon Township neighborhood. She has one thing on her mind right now.
That she wants to spend some quality time with her children and her grandchildren first, and then afterwards she wants to return to Jersey Kebab immediately as fast as she can.
Her son Mohammed translated for her. Amina was quick to thank everyone for standing behind her family.
Support that, the community has showed for us, and, how they protected us and almost like put like a protective chamber around our family during these times. It made her very emotional.
She wants to return to Jersey Kebab immediately. And it's all footage and coverage from NBC 10 News in Philadelphia. One community, as her son put it, putting a protective chamber around this one local family. Getting together, meeting in person, writing letters, rousting their local officials and getting them to make some noise about it, getting them to hold a press conference about it, getting the local media to cover it, people showing up in person, protesting in person. And they just kept doing thing after thing after thing, and it worked. And at least for now, for that family, it's obviously the most important thing in the world. But for this town, it also showed this town that all those things, showing up and writing letters and roasting your elected officials and holding press conferences and getting the local media involved and protesting, showing up in person, it works. It matters. Democratic Congressman Eugene Vindman represents the 7th District in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This week, we learned that he is one of the lucky recipients of what a non-lawyer might call a nastygram and what a lawyer might call a threat from Donald Trump's hand-picked U.S. attorney, top federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. Congressman Vindman is one of at least 3 serving Democratic members of Congress who has received a typo-ridden, legally incoherent, frankly bizarre, threatening letter like this from Ed Martin in the U.S. Attorney's Office. The Washington Post reports that this letter to Eugene Vindman is one of about 20 such letters that U.S. Attorney Ed Martin is believed to have sent. Congressman Eugene Vindman, thank you so much for being with us here tonight. I really appreciate you making the time.
Rachel, thanks for having me. I call this a Dear Eugene letter, and I hope you having me on doesn't mean you're going to be the next recipient.
Well, I wonder actually who has received them and how many really have gone out. I was very surprised after you went public with this week to see the Washington Post reporting that sources familiar with the matter say that he sent out about 20 of these. We know he's done it to Chuck Schumer in the Senate. We know he's done to Congressman Robert Garcia and to you in the House. I don't know who the other 17 are. I don't know if people are going to go public with them. I also wonder if he's just so poorly executed these threats that maybe he sent them to wrong addresses. I mean, the letter that he sent to you looks like it was written in crayon. I have to ask how you reacted to it when you first opened it up and saw what it was.
Well, Rachel, when I first got the letter, I thought some unhinged individual got a hold of the letterhead and was just sending a letter riddled with falsehoods and legally nonsensical things to me. I didn't realize it was serious until we had phone calls from the office. And I mean, it seems like they've hired a bunch of chuckleheads, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to weaponize government. We've seen this in the intimidation firings of other civil servants, folks that live in my district, like FBI agents and DOJ agents. It's filled with lies. And the bottom line is it's an attempt to silence and intimidate, and it's just not going to work. It didn't work in 2019. It's not going to work now.
When you say that you've had calls following up on this, are these calls from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington? Who's calling you, and what are they demanding, or what are they asking of you?
Well, one of the minions in that office called several times and was very insistent that this is a top priority for DOJ. We said, okay, hold your horses, buddy. We'll respond to you in due course. I was frankly busy.